Hello, guys. I'm Isaac Elliott. I'm just getting on YouTube to do some fun interviews with some friends of mine who are into similar things I am and who have like-minded views than me. Today, we're going to interview my acting coach, Steve Austin, who's been in a bunch of stuff, and he's just such an incredible coach. Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Isaac. Thank you.
Good, good. So tell me, for those who don't know you, tell me like a little bit of your background.
Well, let's see. If you're talking all the way to the start,
It
I
doesn't
was,
have to be like this, like I was born this day. You can just like what I'm trying to say is what led you to get into acting? Like
okay.
what was
Okay.
that like?
So that was probably fourth or fifth grade. We did a play, and I heard the applause, and I was like, "What's this feeling? This is weird." And so I enjoyed that. I remembered that, and then when I hit, I think it was seventh, middle school.
Mhm.
I was in an English class, and the teacher had us. We were reading a story or a play or something like that. I think it was more like a story, and she assigned each student to be a character. So I did that, and I guess I just read with a lot of flourish and a lot of extra character. I can barely remember it. I just remember her coming up to me after class and saying, "Stephen, promise me that when you hit high school, which was back then was ninth grade, that you'll look this teacher up and that you'll take her drama class at the high school, which is just across town." And so that's what I did. I said, "Oh, okay, this will be interesting." And there I met my drama teacher of 4 years, Marvel Gardner, and that's basically where it started. She taught the basics of theater, and so from then on, I mean, I had the lead in the school play at least every single year.
It's
Um,
amazing.
and
Yeah.
so but then something strange happened. I mean, during those 4 years, I decided, well, I'm just going to go to LA. I told everybody, and I'm going to go to LA and become an actor. And I lived in north of San Francisco, so it's not that far of a drive. But I didn't have a plan, nor did I really have any kind of serious acting coach or agent or anybody that I knew that was living in Los Angeles. But in the meantime, my parents signed me up with an acting coach in San Francisco that I did on the weekends uh, to kind of prepare me, in case I wanted to go to college. At that time, I was not interested in college, and I thought I had such a hard time in high school, with the exception of maybe physiology and maybe acting, that I kind of soared through. But at any rate, I remember my acting coach in San Francisco saying, "Now, what college are you going to study acting at?" And I said, "Well, I'm not. I'm going to go to LA as soon as I can." "Oh, dear boy," he says. And anytime some 70-year-old acting coach says "dear boy," you're about to really make a serious mistake. So that kind of, I was conflicted at that point, and you know, really just I didn't talk to my parents about it. I just kind of remembered that my older brother went into the military 2 years prior, and I remembered where that recruiting station was, only 12 miles north of town. So I drove up there. I drove up there on my own just to get some information. Made an appointment with the Air Force recruiter because it was began with A. Again, you have no plan, right? And I go into the recruiting section. I see down this long hallway, there's this gunnery sergeant. Now that I know all the ranks, he was a gunny sergeant. And he's standing there, like Arlie Ermy. And he's just in this most imposing pose you can imagine. And he's just looking at me going, "Come here, son. Come here. Come on down here." And the Air Force recruiting office was the first door on my right. Thank God. And the Sarge heard this gunny talking to me, and he goes, "Hey, Steve, in here, come here."
Was he a
So,
Marine?
yeah, no,
Oh,
No, the Sarge was staff sergeant in the Air Force, but because it had like Air Force recruiting, Navy recruiting across from each other, and
Uh-huh.
then Coast Guard and Marine Corps was at the end. Army was almost at the end.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Well, what was your military career like? Tell me a little bit about that.
yeah, I mean, I thought he really kind of pushed me toward security police, probably because of my grades and the entrance exam. Even though I scored pretty high in mechanical, I had pretty high aptitude for mechanics. Um, uh, but my general score, um, then it was called the ASVAB. I don't know if it still exists.
Yeah, it's still the ASVAB, at
Armed
least when I was in high
Armed
school.
Forces Vocational Aptitude Battery. That's it. Anyway, I don't know. I could have, looked at meteorologist or some other kind of public affairs, at that time. And then he showed me a clip of security police and an old VHS or a Betamax tape, and I was like, wow, look at that. They're shooting up guns and they get to, arrest people on the runway and protect planes and all this stuff. And, I kind of fell for that.
Mhm.
But those first 7 years were interesting. I mean, I did meet my wife. So
Was your wife military too, or no?
no, she was a spouse, or not spouse, but she was the dependent of a Air Force Chief Master Sergeant. Chief Master Sergeant is the highest enlisted rank you can go, and that's my
Mhm.
father-in-law. And so when I got stationed in Vegas, all because the Thunderbirds
Oh,
was there.
Vegas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I went to tech school in San Antonio, Texas, and when they were saying, you got to choose your first base, I overheard people saying, "Hey, the Thunderbirds are at Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas," and so I went, "Hey, Las Vegas is pretty close to California. Yeah, why don't I just try that out?" I didn't have any desire to go overseas at that point. I was just going to do 4 and out. That was it. That was my initial thought. And but before you know it, you've sunk in 7 years and then 10 years. So anyway, I did 7 years as a cop in the Air Force, went from Las Vegas to South Korea, and then from South Korea came back here to Colorado to pick up my new wife. We just got married. And then from Colorado, we went up to or went all the way over to England to spend our first 3 years of married life over there in England. And then
What's
from there,
England like?
huh?
What's England like?
England was beautiful.
Hmm.
That was beautiful. If I had the right kind of job, which would have been a day job, instead
Hmm.
of working around the clock as a cop and very little off time, which made it hard for us to travel. We had the weekends, and then maybe one time a year I got a week off, and so we made it to Barcelona. We made it to Europe a couple of times, um, and then I decided to get out of the cops, and they actually let me go. And I retrained into another career field, which was education and training. You see how this all kind of leads toward acting
Yeah,
coach?
I see how it all kind of leads to what you do now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really strange.
I have two friends who live in London, and they're both combatives instructors. So it's pretty cool. London's
Yeah,
on my bucket list. So
yeah.
yeah,
So during my time when I came back, I retrained and I got stationed in Alabama of all places. But it
yeah.
turned,
My dad's from rattlesnake capital of the world.
yeah, it really turned me off. The racism down there was so rampant. Really opened my eyes. Being from California, I mean, I had so many friends of people of color.
Hmm.
It never dawned on me. I really didn't until I hit Texas. Basic training, and you start hearing all these different words, and you're like, "Whoa, what the heck? You're from
Yeah.
where?" So it's truly a melting pot. But anyway, so I everywhere I went though, Isaac, I tried to satisfy my desire for being an actor through community theater. I remember that coach in San Francisco saying, "Dear boy, if you need to get experience with people. You will be eaten up and spit out in LA before you can say headshot, you know?
Mhm.
So I said, get some experience in life, do community theater, stay at home and just take a college course here and there then, or, something. And so that's kind of what I did. Every base I went to had a theater group. And so I did plays. I just, to satisfy my acting bug, and then one day my boss, who happened to be a captain, she comes in and she says, "Oh, I don't know, Sergeant Austin, I don't know what I'm going to do." And I said, "What's the matter?" She said, "Well, my base parade's narrator went on leave and didn't tell me he's a captain." And I said, "Well, I've been to those parades. I almost fainted. We all, these base parades were like a quarterly event for retirement for retirees. You could request a parade where the whole wing of the base turns out and they're all standing in formation for you. It's like, oh my, anyway. And then the Alabama heat, you don't want to be doing that,
No,
but
I
they,
grew up in the South too. The
yeah,
heat's just, yeah.
but they don't care. That back then they didn't care. And so anyway, I said, "Well, what's he got to do?" And she said, "He's got to read this big retirement script. All these retirees, there's like 7 of them." And I said, "Well, let me see it." And I looked through it and I said, "Well, it's a script. I could do that." I said, "Why don't you let me try?" "Oh, that'd be great. Oh, you'd save my career and blah, blah, blah. So I did it, and it was a way to get out of that formation instead of standing there at attention, sweating to death and I'm watching troops they're fainting all left and right. And
Mhm.
they would have ambulances behind every single group. They would have an ambulance and just cart you off and they drag you out and everybody just fills in. It's the most impersonal, horrendous thing you've ever seen in your life. So from then on, I kind of built that reputation around that voice, that uh, the way that I would read these citations, these medals that were really long and they're written without periods. They're like a continuous sentence. And people started coming up to me and they started saying, "Wow, you have got the greatest voice and the greatest presentation style. Would you mind, we got some other private ceremony. Would you, be our announcer for that?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure." So that kind of gave me my theater fix too, that getting in front of a crowd in a live setting where you can't make mistakes. You got to be perfect. You know, it's somebody's retirement. It's somebody's, and not only the individual, but their wife. Back then, it was mainly men who were retiring. And so you had to read the spouse's certificate and the medal and all this kind of stuff, the bio. And you had to hang in there for 7, 8, 9 people. And so it would go on for 2.5 hours. It was a good 2.5 hours. So, that's one mixed blessing that the Air Force gave me, was the opportunity to do that. And that carried over to here once I transferred to Colorado. The parades officer wrote a really nice letter to the general at the Air Force Space Command back then and said, "Hey, if you don't use this guy as your base parade narrator, you're a fool, because he's incredible. Check him out." And it worked. I mean, some guy from the office called me one day and said, "Hey, we hear that you got a special kind of voice. Would you mind coming down here and reading the script for us? So we just kind of, test you out." And I said, "Yeah, sure." Came down there and then boom, I was gone all the time. I was going out to Falcon. I was going up to Cheyenne Mountain to do a ceremony. I'd go up to the Air Force Academy and do a ceremony. So I was kind of farmed out. I wasn't making any money, but you're building a reputation. Give me that guy. Give me that guy from Space Command give me the voice. And so that's what this thing is.
That's why you call your company the Actor's Voice now, huh?
Exactly.
That's cool.
Exactly.
Now, when did you start getting into film?
So film, that was probably, I was here in 1991 when I got my first agent here in Colorado Springs. They used to have agents here in town.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and in the 80s and 90s, film was big here. They were shooting you know, oh, what's that one? Not Murder, She Wrote, but Diagnosis Murder with Dick Van Dyke. They were shooting that right up the way up in Denver. ABC Movies of the Week were being shot in Denver. It was the heyday, back then. And so, but I didn't have any experience. So my agent said, we got to start you off in commercials. Everything starts with commercials. There's no secret way to jump the film. You just got to start in commercials, get some experience, and then they'll notice you. So that's how it started. Started doing local commercials, where I did about 70 of those here in town. And so that was fun. And so one day, the wing commander, I was working for the wing commander as a protocol guy. And it's weird. It sounds weird, but it's not. He sees me in the bathroom, this full bird colonel. And he says, Steve, I saw you on TV last night. It was a commercial for a chiropractor. And I said, oh, yes, sir. I do that on the side. Really? That's really neat. That's fantastic. Good for you. Good for you. So, but again, it was a long, long struggle. That's 1991 when I did my first commercial. So really, they closed like 5 years later because everything was starting to go downhill. And the work was drying up. So I had to go try for Denver. I said, well, obviously, got to go to the bigger pond. And one night I was watching the news and I saw a story about Big Fish Talent, the agency in Denver. And the leader of that agency was Peter Dianello. And he was up doing an actor's weekend. And I was like, actor's weekend? Oh, man, that'd be cool. And they had these two guys from Hollywood, Zen Gessner and Rob Moran. And Zen Gessner was Sinbad back in the early 90s on TV. And I remember that show. I was like, I'm not gonna watch Sinbad. But this long-haired surfer dude, and that's who he is. He lives in Malibu and he's a surfer. Anyway, so they were there and they were saying, yeah, we just love this group because they write their own things, they write their own scenes and monologues. And I was like, oh man, that's who I got to get signed with. So the next Monday, called them up, talked to Peter, got an interview and brought my headshots and resume in. And he had me do a commercial and a monologue and some scene work. And he said, okay, well, you're good for commercials, but if you want to get into film, you need to take acting class. And so, and I was like, oh man, I got to spend money again. So he said, he handed me some business cards and he goes, here are the top coaches in this Denver region. I want you to audit every single one of them. And you find the one that kind of talks to you. And then I'll start submitting you for, scene work and film work and things like that. And I went, oh, okay. And that's how I met Paul. And when I audited his class, I audited all these others first. And I went, no, these I just didn't like the way they talk to their actors. And then I go into Paul's class. And
yeah, because it's all about how you build your actors up.
Right.
Like, yeah.
And that was it. I walk in, this class is just packed and people are having a great time. And I'm watching these people up there get in front of the camera and doing all this really subtle work and not theater. And it was a different style, I was like, oh, what are they doing? So that was it. I signed up. I had to wait 3 months just to get in. He had a waiting list 3 months long. But I waited. I just waited and I was auditioning. And so I took his class. I was taking his class and then I started to get callbacks. And then the callbacks then turned into my first booking, which was like a King Super commercial. It was like a national commercial for King Supers as a butcher. And all I was doing was just holding up a fake steak on a tray. I was $1,000 for that. I was like, well, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So, so that began 9 years of study with him. And then I remember he and Peter, though, during one of these big weekend seminars, they approached me one day and said, Steve, we think with your background, you have the perfect background for being an acting coach, and you could open up a franchise of the Roaring Success program in Colorado Springs, and you wouldn't have any competition. And I'm like,
Mhm.
what? I wasn't, really wasn't listening. And
Yeah.
I was just wanting to be an actor. I just wanted to be in the back, put my head down and do the work. And all of a sudden these guys just say, we want you to be a coach. And I'm like, what? And I was, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. And
Uh-huh.
they said, no, just think about it. We're just saying, think about it. We're not talking about like this year or next year, even. We just think that you have the perfect background. Your entire family were teachers. Your grandparents were teachers. Your brother's a teacher, everybody. And look what you do for the Air Force. So just think about it, be the natural progression. So I kept that in the back of my mind, and you just fast forward to 2013, and I was struggling. I was having a nervous breakdown at work, as a government employee, and my acting was taking off. I was booking things, and I couldn't balance them anymore. One had to go, and just mental health wise, I was sucking. And so my therapist told me, you need to make a change, and you need to make it now, or you may not be here next week or
Mhm.
next year for Christmas. So that opened my eyes and said, wow, that's serious, man. I really do. So I talked it over with Dana, and we kind of formulated a plan. But I kind of thought that I would be able to stick it out for the year until work just piled another thing on me that just broke me. And I was like, that's it. I quit. Here's
Mhm.
my 30-day notice. I'm gone in May. I
Mhm.
quit. I can't do this anymore. You guys are piling. I don't know who I am anymore, And so in 2014, I started with my first two students, and here we are today. 10
That's
years,
awesome.
10 years, 10 years to the month almost. How about that?
So, what all, of course, I already know, but what all have you been in that you can say?
Well, of course, the biggest thing going backwards would be Yellowstone.
Yeah.
I was in season 5, episode 1 as the Supreme Court Justice. Before that, I did a film called The Graduates, which still hasn't been released yet, but it's on IMDb, and I play a priest in that one. I have a really good scene, a couple of good scenes in that one, but I'm still waiting for it to get out of the film festival circuit and get released on some kind of platform. Uh,
Mhm.
let's see. And then, of course, I did Better Call Saul in 2018.
I
And,
love Better Call Saul. That is
right. I played a lawyer in that one. And so I got to work with Bob Odenkirk and Michael McKean and a bunch of other really, really good actors who were day players with me. And then I got another show called Perpetual Grace. That's where I got my SAG card, Screen Actors Guild.
Mhm.
And but it's as a double-edged sword. Uh, I spend a full day down there shooting some nice scenes, and then 6 months later, I'm watching the show, waiting for my scene to pop up. Nothing. I ended up on the cutting room floor.
Uh-huh.
So, that was my first cutting room floor incident, where I got cut out, but it's on my resume. I'm not on IMDb for it though, because
Mhm.
you have to air. You have to make it to air. Okay.
Mhm.
You have to actually see yourself in order for them to do it. Uh,
Right.
but that's how I got my SAG card, and I got paid, and I'm still getting paid even though I didn't appear in it. I get residuals.
That's awesome.
Oh, and of course, I think my first big break was actually in Denver, believe it or not. Rick Ramage, he's a Denver Boulder writer and producer, and he did a Christmas movie, a holiday film called at the time it was called Christmas Time, and then he changed it to Heaven Sent. and
Mhm.
they were auditioning for the part, day player part of a mailman named George the mailman. And he's in the opening scene, and I auditioned for it, a couple of callbacks, and then a couple of weeks goes by, and then I get the call from Peter saying, "You booked it." And that was my first SAG job. That was the very first one.
That's
And
awesome.
that was fun to go to the premiere. They held the premiere in Denver at the Boulder Theater. Thousands of people were there, and it was just so much fun. So much fun.
That-
And yeah, my whole family was there to watch the whole movie, and there I am up on the big screen. You know, seeing your name up there at the end in the credits, it realized the dream of mine, a vision that I had seen way back in the 70s when my mom took me to see Grease. And
I love these.
yeah, and you
Yeah.
know, I sat there and it was just a vision I had. I saw my name, Stephen F. Austin. I said, "Mom, that's what I'm gonna do. Someday you're gonna see my name on this giant screen."
Mhm.
And you know, it's true. It happens. If you see that vision and you see it through, no matter what kind of trials you may have throughout your life. Here I am, 61, and I made it on Yellowstone. So if that can happen to me, that can happen to anybody, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What is your best advice for someone like me who is um, a young person who's trying to get into acting, and what steps can they take in order to get there?
Well, of course, number one, you got to take class. You got to be in a workshop and an on-camera workshop. I'm not talking about theater. If you want to be in Broadway, then you got to go to college or you got to go to a professional acting school
Mhm.
to study heavily. Okay. But if you want to be in commercials, industrials, and film and television, you need to be in an on-camera actors workshop, much like mine. Doesn't matter with whom, it doesn't matter. But you have to constantly be studying the techniques that the industry want. And if your coach hasn't been in the business for 10, 15 years, I don't think you're getting the current information, you know. So number one, get an acting coach. Okay. Number two, you got to have a really thick skin. You're got to get used to being rejected 10, 20, 100, 1,000 times in the hopes that you get one job.
Mhm.
And then that job is over, you get paid, and you start over again. If you can't take that, then the acting world is not for you
Mhm.
because you're going to go through thousands and thousands of auditions. And so you really got to get used to rejection. Three, you can never give up. You can
Mhm.
never give up. If it's truly inside you and you really want to do this kind of craft, you know, then you can never ever give up. I I get excited every single time I see an audition notice pop up in my email. I'm like, yeah, here we go, let's go. I hit print and I start doing my script breakdown work and I start delving into the character and finding out, well, what does he want in this scene? What do I want? What did they want from me? And then I try, I put myself on camera and I start doing the work. So that leads me to number four. You got to do the work.
Yeah.
You have to do the hard work, which is study, 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 and watch yourself on camera week after week after week, and try to find, the things that you can change.
Mhm.
Yeah, and by that I mean your delivery. I can't change this. I
Mhm.
can't. I can't change it. I could maybe lose weight, sure, but you're born with the face and the body you have. That's just fact, you know. But the way in which you deliver the lines, your smile, things like that, you can change those things.
Yeah.
So I would say that those are the four top things
Mhm.
that you really, really need to have. Actors got to have a passion. They got to have a passion to get in front of a camera and not be nervous, right?
Right. Well, I we got to wrap it up because I didn't pay for the full subscription. But so, do you have anything else you want to say to the people watching this video? Like,
Well, I mean, I want to thank you for doing this. Every opportunity I get to talk to somebody either on a podcast or, you know, an in-person interview over the phone. I talk to a parent of a kid who wants to get into acting. I'll be on the phone for an hour. So,
yeah.
but
Well,
thank
you're
you
welcome.
for doing
I
this.
was
And
happy to do this. Yeah.
yeah, I hope that, you know, people get out there and look, if they're interested in the workshop, then all they need to go to is theactorsvoiceworkshop.com.
And where can they find you on social media? Like, are you on Instagram and Facebook and all that too?
Yep, you just type in Stephen Austin. I think it's 6198, but Stephen Austin, and they'll find me. They'll see my headshot. And Facebook, I'm under Steve Austin. LinkedIn, I'm under Steve Austin. So, you know, there you have it. You can look me up on IMDb under Stephen Fuller Austin because everything was already taken. So I had to use all three names.
I love how when my dad met you the first time, he didn't use the wrestler Steve Austin to kind of poke at you, but the $1 million man thing, that was just funny to me.
That's right. Yeah, you got to be my age to remember that far back. And
Yeah.
go, "Oh, that's right. The $6 million man. It was a big show. It was a #1 show for years, for 7-8 years. So all the time I was in, you know, grade school, middle school, and high school and beyond, you know.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate your time and you have a good rest of your day.
Sure. Thank you, Isaac. See you later.
You're welcome.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.